Hello, everyone, dear students and friends, colleagues. I'm making this podcast primarily for my students that are doing research. So these are my research students, and so in the process of getting our field notes into a discernible thesis statement, that is an argument which will then inform the creation of the entire research paper. It's a delicate process, and I know that a lot of my research students right now are in the midst of that process. And so I wanted to give some feedback about how I personally have gone about the process of in-the-field research collection with my journalistic and then primarily sociological research and field work that I personally have done. So I wanted to kind of give you guys back some of my own personal, well, I don't know if I call it wisdom, but at the very least, experiences and feedback. So to that end, I created for all of us a really neat, well, I think it's a really neat, really cool presentation, which I'm going to share with my students in my class. Yeah. But let's take a look at it as a screen share. And actually make this nice and big into the full complete presentation, which should be one big screen for all of us. Okay, so your research field notes into your thesis statement. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, number one, develop your field notes, quotes, and observations around what your respondents say. So, A, recordings are best to use for interviews and thus to get notes. Okay, so I'm going to make my pitch for recordings and using recordings in every fieldwork interview that you conduct with, we call this ethnographic research, or with ethnographic respondents, talking to respondents in the field. Always best, at the very least, just to take out your smartphone, whatever it is, turn it on, and turn on the recording device. Set it down in the middle of the table. Let them know, obviously, that let your respondent know that that this is being recorded. Obviously, if you're using an IRB, you need to let your respondent know and sign this. And if you aren't using an IRB, which you may not be, but even if you're not, still you need to let all of your respondents know that they are being recorded, and this is for an academic study. At any rate, so you turn that on, and I personally use this for my work. This cost me a pretty penny. About 5 years ago, I bought it. Yeah, just about 5 years ago. I think it was over $400, maybe $500. This is an Olympus, well, LS10. I think they're on the LS12 now. But at any rate, this is a really nice recording device. I mean, you can basically almost do, not quite professional level, obviously not Hollywood professional level, recording, but you can do pretty good recording, and you can do great field work with this. This catches more audio. Now, those of you who are undergraduates doing the field work process, I don't expect you to go out and throw $300 or $400 down. Anyway, you even just you use the phone, it's fine. But the point is to have a way to record. That's really, really helpful for you. And you might say, why? Well, okay, I can take notes, no big deal. Well, you can take notes, yes. Notes are good. I'm not saying you shouldn't take a few notes while you're talking to someone, but you catch the full interview once or twice listening through later on. So you turn on the phone, you put it there on the table, you do your interview. When you finish, you turn it off, you save the file, and then when you go home, in the next day or 2 or 3 or even a week or 2 weeks later, you're able to just turn this on and listen through it. Listen through the whole interview. Interview might be 40 minutes long, it might be 10 minutes long, it might be 5 minutes long, but the point is that you're able to listen through the whole thing. So, and it helps you to recall the interview. So I really want to stress that at the very least, recording with your phone is fundamental. You got to be able to do it. Now, I also do, when I go out into the field, I actually do video recording usually of my respondents. But that's because I've been working as a journalist for 8 years, and then also working, you know, in academia for a number of years and doing academic and you know, commercial journalistic work. So I don't expect you guys to do video, but the audio is important. So okay. Let's go back into the second kind of field work, which is important for us to make a delineation or difference of. So bring that up right here. And we see here, only take field note observations via your pen or on your computer when you get in the field. Now, when I say computer, of course, this can be an iPad, whatever it is, what kind of padular device or computer, whatever you're using. And the concept of everyday is fundamental in research. Okay, so the reason why I say to you, when you're in the field and you're doing what's called observations, it's fundamental, is because there's a sociological concept we call the everyday. And the everyday is basically, imagine when you first arrived in a place that you went on vacation to. Okay, and everybody has this experience. You arrive in a new place, and you immediately are struck with new sights, new sounds, new smells. Your senses are alive for a few days when you come into a new city, go on vacation, going wherever. Your senses in some ways are more alive, more registering than they are when you're back home. Now, why does that happen? Well, what happens is we become normalized. We become accepting of our environment, the milieu in which we exist. It becomes normal. So people talk about living in Cairo, Egypt, and it's a hard place to live. But you, in some ways, become normalized to the traffic. You know, the jither, right, of in Arabic of al-Qaira is crushing, or at least that's one of the meanings. Okay, so it's a crushing place, you know. But if you get used to it, you normalize it and you don't feel it. However, if you have never lived in Cairo before and you come to Cairo for the first time, so many new things address or come at someone, right? And I remember that when I first came as a foreigner. So in some ways, a foreigner has an entirely new set of eyes on a place where, for example, Egyptians are very used to Cairo, or at least Cairns are very used to Cairo. In the same way, an Egyptian or, you know, Cairean goes from Cairo and they arrive in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, the great state capital of the great state of Wisconsin, where, you know, where I happen to be from. If you would come to Madison, Wisconsin, there would be things that I would not even really notice because I'm a Wisconsinite. You know, I don't, you know, oh yeah, the leaves change color. Oh yeah, we have 3 feet of snow. Oh yeah, the Green Bay Packers are, of course, the greatest football team in the world, right? I mean, of course they are. Of course we've won 13 world championships. And all those other soccer, those little teams are nothing. Like, of course it's normal for us, right? But if you would come to Wisconsin and see the cheese and the snow and the leaves and the Green Bay Packers, you know, and the beer, well, those, of course, I'm not supporting the drinking of any alcohol. But at any rate, point is, if you would go to Wisconsin, you would see all different kinds of things that someone from there wouldn't know about. This is what we call the everyday. And you are able to see everyday things the minute you come into a new region. Now, let's go back and talk about that regarding field notes and observations. If you go to a new place, a village, it could be anywhere, right? It could be, I have a student right now that's doing working with researching substance abuse and its treatment in one substance abuse center in Cairo. It's a fantastic topic. It's really interesting. Now, what this student should be doing is going into these different, you know, going into this abuse treatment center and discussing all the sights and sounds, the feelings, you know, the things that he sees from patients, from doctors, from nurses, the building itself, the impression of the place, because he's addressing this place. Well, he may be Egyptian, right? And if I went to this place, I might be American. So we'd be coming from different cultural contexts and backgrounds. And again, I want to stress that, as I've said to you guys time and time again, we all are subjective, right? But at the same time, there's a version of objectivity, or at least open-mindedness, that the researcher brings. So you need to be, it's really fundamental, that when you get to a new place, you just are writing notes on a notepad. Or if you've got an iPad or whatever it is, whether or not it's electronic or just written, with a pencil or pen, whatever it is, that you're getting those notes down on the page and you're writing them, or you're writing them on your computer. And the reason that is because you are going to take these notes and be able to apply them in a more complete manner later on when you actually do your research work. Okay, so let's go back now and discuss what we mean when we talk about the application then. So now we understand what field notes are, but now we're going to discuss the application of the field notes into the development of an effective thesis statement, or that basically means, when I say the word thesis statement, I'm talking about the argument. Okay, so you have completed all of your research. Okay, and now you're trying to take this research and bring it into an argument form. Okay, so I talk about transcription or picking the greatest hits. Okay, so you're going to look at all of your field note observations and quotes that speak to you. And by that I mean, you'll need to transcribe. Probably, if you wrote it on paper, you'll need to transcribe all the observations onto a computer. And if it's with audio quotes, you'll need to listen once or twice or 3 times, to the quotes, or to the actual entire interview. And then you will take the observations and quotes which make you think deeper about your topic. So anything that really that comes out to you, you're like, yes, this bit of information, whether or not it's an observation in a field clinic dealing with clinical addiction, whatever that it could be, that quote, or it could be a quote from a doctor, or whatever it is. But either the quote or the observation, whatever it is, you definitely need to create that into a separate document, write it out on your computer, put the note down, and also be able to add your own perspective on this. Okay, so you've written out, you've transcribed your quote, or you brought or transcribed over your field observation. Okay, so the quote or the observation, you got it down, that's great. But also it's important to see what that little point made you think about the general topic, about the research in general, the research direction. Okay, so and why am I saying you need to really look at the idea development? Well, let's go into this, and basically, idea development is everything. That's why we're in the academy. That's why we're doing university work. It's all about knowledge production, right? The idea is to produce new ideas, develop those ideas, critique those ideas. So the goal of transcription of field notes is for you to develop ideas as a teacher-student of this material. So I want you to really think of yourselves as an academic teacher to other students, and also a student yourself. You need to be humble and be a student as well. But remember that these new ideas are why specifically we are at the university/academy. This is it. This is why we're here. We want you to develop these ideas and be able to express them to others. Okay. Then I talk about the gestation period. Okay. And gestation means basically the development of a new idea. Okay. And I say to you all that you're all pregnant with a thesis statement, or you're pregnant with an argument. All of you have it. But what I've said to you at the beginning of our work together is, no, you can't tell me what your final supposition is going to be. You have to be, we talk about having a tight focus, but general questions. Okay, focus tight, general questions. That means we could find out a lot of information about this small thing. We ask general questions because we don't really actually know what the field work and the research is going to show. But now, in the gestation period, you can begin to develop what that research is telling you. You can begin then to develop what your argument is going to be for the overall research paper. But what's important is that you go through this process called the gestation period. And it's fundamental because you've just come out of the field. You're working hard. You're probably tired from that whole process. You need a few days off. You need some time to sit back from this whole thing. But at the same time, you have to keep the notes in mind. So after, you've got all your transcription, all the greatest hits, the best quotes are after that's all in your mind, then you've got the best parts written out on documents. Okay. But now go for a break, eat a candy bar, play basketball, drive your car, pet your dog, watch a movie, sing to your girlfriend or boyfriend, do all this stuff. Just relax. But at the same time, keep the separate greatest hit observations close and look at the best ideas. So I say, go for a drive for an hour or two, relax, pet your dog, go for a walk with your dog, but come back, watch a movie, whatever, play a game of basketball, eat a candy bar, I don't care, serenade your boyfriend or girlfriend, all that's wonderful, but keep through if you take a few days off, be able to go back to these observations and quotes. Just look at them. Keep them in the back of your mind, because I promise the gestation period is the period that your ideas begin to grow subconsciously. You don't even know it's happening, but I'm telling you, you are pregnant with a thesis statement. And I ask you and I challenge you to let the thesis statement grow in your mind naturally. Don't force it. Okay. And as I say, as you're letting this develop in your mind, don't lose the forest for the trees. This is what we mean when we say this to you. Those of you who know this quote, some of my foreign students maybe don't, or know this saying, but to lose the forest for the to lose the forest for the trees means you're really up close, tight to this thing. You're looking at it really, really close, right? But now I ask you to step back from it a little. Keep it in mind. Keep the good points, good pieces in mind, but step back. Give a little space. Think about it. See it. Conceptualize about it. Critique it. Go a little deeper. Critique it again. Go a little deeper, right? But then always be able to step back in this gestation process. Finally, based on those greatest hits, observations, and quotes, you can start to develop your main argument thesis statement. I promise you that if you give yourself just a few minutes, a few hours in the day, you really will begin to see, this is it. This is the way I want to create my argument. But if you don't give yourself that distance, it's sort of like you don't want to totally disconnect. I wouldn't say, these 2 or 3 or 4 days, whatever you're taking, I don't say you should go to the beach and, sleep all day, party all night. No. No. You need to maintain a normal life. You need to have some fun. You need to get some distance. But at the same time, through those few days, you need to be able to go back and look at your notes. It's sort of like, talk about having a rope, right? You can let some slack go in the rope, but you always got to have it tight in some way. There needs to be tension. You have to be able to think about it. But here, before you were like this, where it's really tight. Now you give yourself a little slack, but there's still some tightness going on, right? You don't want to forget about it. And because there's this tightness, this tension in the back of your mind, you're still thinking about it. I promise you that you have now the objective, or at least the distance, and the open mind to start to really develop your argument. And that's key. Because right now, in that gestation process is when the argument comes. It comes naturally. It's like, I got it now. Yes, this is what I want to argue. Based on all of the research. You let that argument be based on the research. You never, ever, ever say before the research is done, or something external to the research, that this is going to be my argument. This is going to be my thesis statement. No. It needs to be from that argument, from all of that research, that the argument flows. Okay, so we'll go back into our handy dandy presentation. And, okay. So based on those greatest hits, observations, and quotes, start to develop your main argument and thesis statement. Okay, so we go on. And then number 4 here, I ask you to write your thesis statement and organize your research paper based on the ethnographic evidence. The ethnographic evidence equals your research notes from the field. That is you. So basically, your ethnographic evidence is the observations and the quotes that you have from the field. But you have, as I said, organize your research paper based on that ethnographic evidence. You can't do it the other way. And then once you have the thesis statement, and you can know which means the argument. Once you have this argument finished, then you can start to actually develop a really good research paper. I ask you to organize your research paper around the greatest hits, observations, and quotes. So all of these observations and quotes equal the evidence. The evidence is the bones of the research paper. So you'll be organizing. You start with your research topic, or your research argument, the argument you're making from your research, the thesis statement. Then you support in an initial rough draft, which is what I really want you guys to be doing now. You create the bones of the final draft. And the bones is it's the fundamental structure. And the fundamental structure needs to directly be how the different pieces of your field work evidence / the quotes and the observations, how those quotes and observations, that evidence, supports your argument. So you have your argument, and then you give examples, direct examples from your field research, direct examples from the observations, direct examples from the quotes. You create the structure of the paper like a house without the fundamental basic. It's going to fall over. In the same way, you need this fundamental research base in order to create the house that is your paper. Okay. You need the bones, basically, of your paper. And the bones needs to be exactly all the research you did. Now, after you have written out a rough draft that's shorter, but it's only about the research, after you've created all that very clearly, then what I ask that you do, back in, then what I ask that you do is you move forward and you support the greatest hits, observations, and quotes, your evidence, with ideas and cited sources that you developed in your literature review. So all of this literature review, the argument stuff that you went into, is like the muscle and the skin of the research paper. It fills out the paper. It makes it longer, okay? So, there's a reason why I wanted us to write the literature review first, because you're actually doing a lot of the final work, the skin and the muscle, right? Creating the skin and muscle of the entire paper. Okay? That's why. So what you do is once you have your argument, your thesis statement, and the structure of all the research, then you can take from external sources and kind of strengthen and build those bones. So bones are here, but now you want to add muscle and skin to cover them, and make them even stronger. Right, well, the muscle and skin is going to be all of the stuff you put in initially into your research paper or into your literature review. You take all that literature review stuff and you put it in to the final draft or the final version of your research paper, but you build it again. All those arguments you build from the literature review information, you build those arguments into the structure of the paper, into the research. They all are always supportive. They're not primary. So the literature review and all the literature, it's supportive. In the same way muscle, in the same way skin in some ways, support the bone. The bone is the fundamental thing. It's the research. Okay. And, you're going to, I promise, once you get into doing this, and once you understand the process, it actually becomes very easy. And filling out, the prerequisite 15, 20 pages, whatever that is, that's easy to do once you follow the structure of adding first bone and then all the other muscle and skin, etc. Here we say organize around the traditional intro, body, conclusion structure, but the difference with the research paper is in the intro you need to add much of the information you wrote for the research proposal. That is, you need to basically tell how are you going to be able to, or how did you go ahead and interview? You know, what were the constraints to the field work? You know, these are some general observations that you make. We're going to see how was the evidence gathered and obtained, etc. So moving on, finally, we see here we have extras, the bibliography. We ask you to be sure that you watch the videos on our podcast about the Chicago style and notation. These are all very good. One thing I want to mention about bibliography work and EasyBib, which is a popular thing, is that if you're having any issues with EasyBib, you're able to always shoot out and use something called Citation Machine, which is more or less the same, but EasyBib is better because it creates long-lasting folders and documents that you'll be able to refer to for the rest of your life. And finally, you do need to write an abstract, which will go before the research paper, but we can come to that in another podcast. Okay, well, fantastic working here with you guys. I'm excited to see the research that you put together, and please follow this in the process really of developing your rough draft, and then eventually developing your final draft. Okay, fantastic. Good talking. Take care, everybody.